Welcome back. In this video, we are going to look into lists, and lists allow us to create a variable which contains multiple variables or values within itself. And that is a very important and handy tool that we're going to use quite a lot throughout the course and in general when programming. And imagine you work at the university and now your job is to create a program which contains all the students. Then you could go ahead and do something like that. Student 1 is going to be Max, then student 2 is going to be Monica, then you have student 3, which is Eric, and student 4, which is Franziska. And all of those are German writings of names. And yeah, you can of course go ahead and do that. But as you can see, there was plenty of typing, and that's not a very efficient way. There is a more efficient way, and that is to create a list. So you can go ahead and create a list called students, and in there you can use square brackets in order to create the entries. So I can create Max in there, then after the comma I have Monica again in quotation marks because they are strings. So we have Max as a string, Monica as a string, Eric as a string, and so forth. So now I do the same here, Eric and Franziska. And as you can see, what I had done within 4 lines before, I can now do within 1 line. Now you might wonder, how do I access those people? So how do I access somebody within that list? Well, first of all, let's just print out that student. So let's print out students. And for now, we're just printing out all of them. As you can see, we get this statement here telling us, okay, this is a list. Why do we know that? Well, we know that because we have these square brackets, starting and ending bracket. And within we have strings. And how do we know that? Well, with this apostrophe. So the apostrophe is telling us that these are strings within our list. Now we can of course go ahead and create lists of numbers as well. So we can go ahead and, let's say, create a list with marks where we have the marks of our students 4, 3, 2, 1. Or we could also say these are the general marks that are available within our grading system or something like that. So now you might wonder, how do I access Max? How do I access Monica and so forth? Because before that was easy. I could just say print student 1 and that would be Max. But now what if I want to have Max within the list of students? Well, then there is a different approach. You simply go ahead and state something like students, and then you use square brackets and the index of the value that you want to have. So in our case, I want to have Max, and Max is at the first position. And as programming languages start counting with 0, Max is at the 0th position. So we need to enter 0 here in order to get Max. So let me show you that that's true. And there you are, students 0 is Max. Now go ahead and try to get Eric on your screen to be printed out. All right, I hope you tried it. You could just say something like students, square brackets, and 2. Why 2? Because Eric is at the 3rd position, but from a programming point of view, that's the 2nd or the 2th position. So we enter 2 in here. So that's why we get Eric here. And the same goes from Franziska. She's going to be 3rd or the 3rd index or 3 index pretty much. So that's something that you have to be very careful about because lists always start counting with 0. In general, programming languages do so. All right, so now what if I want to write something like Max and Franziska? Then I can go ahead and do that. Students at the position 0 or at index 0 and or plus and this and is going to be within quotation marks because we're working with a string here, right? The student at the 0th position is Max, or index 0 is Max, and Franziska is also a string. So Max and Franziska are strings in here. That's why I need to use strings. And then I use concatenation in order to print them out in one bigger string. So this whole statement here is a string now. So saying something like Max and Franziska. So now let's print it out. And there we are, Max and Francisca. If you want to know the length of the string or the list that you have, if you want to know how many entries are within the list, you can use the len method or function. So we can go ahead and say something like len. As we had with str, creating a string out of a value, this len gives me the length of a list. So I can just say students, and what we get here is 4, as we have 4 entries within our students list. Now you might say, all right, that's great and all, but how do I add something to my students? I don't want to always go back and add something at the declaration here in this line. I want to be able to add an entry at any point in my program. Well, that's quite easy. You can go ahead and use the append function. The append function allows us to append or to add somebody to or something to a list. And in this case, we're talking about strings, so it makes sense to add a string in here as well. So let's say we have Moritz, it's also a German name again, and we can add him to the list. Now let's check it out. We have added Moritz to the screen or to our program. Now let's go ahead and run this method again, this students len method or function again. And there we are. Now we have 5 people in there. So if we want to know who is in that students list, we can simply print it out. So print students, and we see we have Max, Monica, Eric, Francisca, and Moritz. Now let's go back to numbers quickly, because we had this marks list which contained 4, 3, 2, and 1, and let's say these are the marks of our group. And now let's add a number or a mark to our Moritz. So let's just assume that the first entry here, this index 0, which contains the value 4, is associated with Max, the 3 is associated with Monica, 2 with Eric, and 1 with Francisca. Then our Moritz will get a 2, let's say. So let's append that. Now let's say we would like to get the average marks of our students. Then we can go ahead and do the following. We can just say print marks, and here I need another bracket, marks at position 0 plus marks at position 1 plus marks at position 2 marks at position 3. And you might already say, oh man, that's boring, entering all of that all the time manually and stuff like that. No worries, we're going to learn approaches which make this code here a lot shorter and a lot easier to type. That's gonna happen as soon as we get to one of the next chapters. So now I would like to divide that, because I want to have the average, and I need to divide it by the amount of values that I have here. I could of course say, all right, I'm going to divide it by 5 because that's the amount of values I have. But I can also say I'm going to divide it by the amount of marks that we have within our list. And now you can try it yourself. What would you need to enter here? All right, I hope you figured it out. It's len, it's the len function. So I'm going to say len marks. What that's going to give me is 5, because within my marks, I have 5 entries. And in order to make sure that that is true, I can go ahead and, well, I executed that. I can add another cell in here. So I'm going to press the plus button, and I'm going to say something like len, or actually print len marks. And there you are, it's 5. So now you see we divided 5 values by 5, and that gave us the value of 2.4. So the average mark is 2.4. All right, so I'd say that's a great start into lists, and in the next video, or actually in the next lecture, there's a little quiz waiting for you. And if you figured it out and managed to go through the quiz easily, then you can skip the following lecture and go to the pop function straight away. And otherwise, of course, check out the solution. All right, so see you in the next video.